stranger has just arrived and vows to end the feuding one way or another.
You, Killian? You must be Mr. Beck. Glad you can make it. Well, I'm not one to turn down an invitation. Besides, we don't get to see too many professional gunfighters around here. Is that so? What is them woolies hired you for protection? Whatever they offered you, Mr. Killian, I am prepared to double it. Woolies? I think you mean sheep herders, Mr. Beck. Call them whatever you want. They got no right to be here. Well, this is government property, isn't it? You would think they have as much right to be here as anybody else. Mr. Killian, my wife is buried out behind my house, as well as my brother. Plenty of other good men who died fighting for this land. They did come in here and try and steal it. Well, I think if you talk to a few Indians, they might disagree with you. Well, I'm a good man. I ain't afraid to fight and die. Nor am I. I need to lose a couple of them trying to cut you down, so I'd consider it. I'd much rather pay you than kill you. That is a very generous offer. Why don't you come down here and talk about it? I didn't come here to see it. Patch up the front of an old building all day. Preacher? Why, yes. This old building needs a lot of work, but I plan to have these doors open for service tomorrow morning. Now, if you give me a moment to set my things down inside, I will be more than happy to come out and speak with you.
You think you cattlemen could treat us sheep herders however you like?
Scotty Andrews.
Let's see how sharp you are without your ranch hands backing you up.
What is my man caught you on the north side of my pasture, Scotty? Or were you taking a shortcut into town? Did you bring them sheep shears? Let's finish that haircut of yours.
You and your men have no right to do this to me.
Hey, what's going on out here?
Preacher? With a gun? I never heard of that before.
You know, there's a reason for that. I want to make it very clear that every man and woman in this territory are welcome at this church. And this gun is going to protect their right to be here.
Stay out of this, preacher. Now, Mr. Beck, I'll be settling for that haircut.
Hold your jaw! Both of you. Now listen, I offer my protection to anyone who comes around my church. I don't need your protection, preacher. If you're around here, Asa, then you got it.
You're bluffing. None of this makes any sense. A gunman? Preacher? Can't be both.
Asa, is there a doctor in this town? Yeah, one of the best. Then I will repeat myself. That I said I offer protection to anyone who comes around my church. Now, I would try to understand that if I were you, Scotty. We ought to be getting you off that doctor, huh? Oh, and Mr. Beck. Hope to see you at service tomorrow morning.
Come on.
Just one of 4 films Glenn Ford shot right here at Old Tucson. Heaven with a Gun hit theaters June 4th, 1969. Others, including Carolyn Jones, Barbara Hershey, John Anderson, and David Carradine, all starred alongside Ford in his portrayal of a reformed gunslinger turned preacher and his efforts to bring peace to a bloody range war. We continue now with the story, Sunday morning, following the church service.
Look who it is. Mr. Beck. You know, I was real pleased to see you at service this morning. And you as well. This Garvey is a ranch hand of mine. Howdy. Yes, we did enjoy ourselves this morning. It was a very interesting service. Now, I know what you're going to say, Asa. The cattle and sheep can't graze alongside each other, share the same land or water. That there's a lie. And it's usually a lie that keeps people apart as well. Look at this. A gun owner comes to town claiming to be a preacher.
Yeah, now he's claiming to be an expert on livestock.
No, I'm not claiming to be an expert. But you know, I did talk to a few before I came to town. And as you saw earlier in my demonstration, those animals were getting along just fine in here. And why can't you people?
You think you can bring your trained critters around here, put on a show, and fool everyone? Yo, I did some checking on you, Mr. Killian. I talked to an old friend of yours down in Santa Fe.
Is that so?
Yeah, went by the name of Mace. Says you spent 3 years together in a Yuma prison cell.
Yeah, he said you claimed it was a fair gunfight.
Sheriff said it was murder.
You know what? It's true. I spent some time down in Yuma for gunfighting. That's in the past. I did my time and I learned my lesson. Now I thought you folks came here to talk about cattle.
Yeah, so what you're saying is that cattle and sheep could just graze alongside each other?
That's exactly what I'm saying, Garvey. You saw it yourself.
Well, Mr. Beck, if this is true, we could all possibly improve our profits and our places.
Just think about it, Asa. You can get more out of this land than you've ever dreamed of. If you had enough water and enough grass.
You go to hell! I'm in the cattle business. I need open range and water. Anyone trying to crowd me, start looking for trouble.
Hey, Studo.
Get out of my way, go. Garvey, let me go.
Mr. Beck, I think that's enough.
You stand on this, Garvey.
Asa, listen to me.
Listen to you. You're trying to tell me what to do now, Garvey.
No, Mr. Beck.
You think you have anything without me?
No, Mr. Beck.
I got a point to prove. Are you trying to stand in my way?
No, Mr. Beck, I just think that's enough.
It's enough, or I say it's enough. Garvey, I said stay on this wall.
No. Mr. Beck. No.
You came here claiming to be a preacher. That ain't no Bible on your hip. You got a choice, Mr. Killian. Preacher or gunman. Heaven or hell. Garvey!
Jim's past had finally caught up with him. Being exposed as an ex-convict proved detrimental in his struggle against the unscrupulous rancher Asa Beck. It seemed that things will only get worse before they get better. As we enter into day 3 of the story, Garvey brings unsettling news.
Mr. Killian! Mr. Killian!
What is it, Garvey?
It's about Scotty Andrews.
Go on.
Well, Ace's son and a few of his men were at the bar drinking last night, bragging about how they're going to stop Mr. Patterson and Mr. Murdoch's herds from running together.
Go on. How do they suppose they're going to do that, huh?
They said that they're going to meet the men in the herd down by the lake, and if either of them try to reach the water, they're going to have to fight their way to it.
All right, Garvey. What does this have to do with Scotty Andrews?
Well, last night after they left the bar, they went to Scotty Andrews' house and they burnt it to the ground. Now, Scotty took his family down to Santa Fe and said when things were safe that he was going to come back and settle things with the Becks. Now, look, I know I work for Mr. Beck, but I know this ain't right. I ain't a bad man.
I believe you, Garvey.
Now, I was at your service the other day, even if I shouldn't have been. And I understand if you don't want me back, but I swear I had nothing to do with this.
Garvey, you know, the Lord closes his house to sinners. I wouldn't be allowed through the front door. You're more than welcome back in service.
Garvey! You come to see the preacher for confession?
Your shoulder right there, Asa. Now Now, like I told you, I offer my protection to anyone who comes around my church. And you told me about Mr. Patterson and Mr. Murdoch's plans of running their herds together, and I know about your plans to stop it. Believe me, I would do everything in my power not to let you. Stay here, Garvey. If you think you can stop me preaching, you're mistaken. That was a warning shot, Killian. Next one will be right between your eyes.
Now wait, just maybe these folks are right.
Garvey!
Told you I wasn't afraid to fight, Killian. Ain't afraid to die, neither.
There's innocent lives at stake, Asa. Oh, for what? Your pride?
I don't give a damn what I have to cut down. It's how it's been, how it ought to be.
Garvey, get down.
You think you can come in here, ruin my land, waste my water? If I was you, I'd get to praying, preaching. You kill me, Garvey?
Yes, Mr. Beck.
Come on, Garvey. Let's go. Let's get you inside. Hold on.
Jim, Killian, and Garvey both recovered from their wounds. At the request of the congregation, Jim stayed on as preacher of Vinegaroon, and in the end, ranchers from both sides finally learned that cattle and sheep could graze together harmoniously, without conflict. Ladies and gentlemen, the actors of Old Tucson.
Thank you, folks. We hope you enjoyed our show, Heaven with the Gun. Be sure to stick around. There are a few more shows to see. Thanks for coming out to Old Tucson, where the spirit of the Old West comes alive.